My name is Wooda McNiven, and I've been a volunteer here at Simsbury Community Television for over 10 years now. My guest here today is Jacob Bittens, who's also been a volunteer at SCTV for a good number of years. I think you first walked in here when you were a sophomore in high school?
Yeah.
Okay. We haven't seen Jacob much here in the last 3 years, but there's a good reason for that. He's been attending New York University, majoring in film production. He's currently a senior at NYU's prestigious Tisch School of the Arts. And last year in his junior year, he undertook what I thought was a very ambitious project, a short film called Little Drifter. Now that Jacob is a senior, he's embarking on another project, and we'll be talking about that later, and Little Drifter as well. But first, let's talk about NYU.
Okay.
NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, especially in filmmaking, is extremely competitive to get into. What did you do to prepare for admission in your high school years to help promote your chances?
Well, the first half of it is that they want you to have pretty good grades. I took the SATs, I took every AP I could, and I really worked hard to get up to what they had made their standards through the application process, what they were looking for. But I admit I'm at the very bottom of that pool for the grade pool, because I spent most of my time on the second half, which is the portfolio. I worked really hard to get them the 10-minute clip for a film that they want to see. They have a writing assignment that you have to do. I worked really hard on that essay. And then, it was my reach school. And there's a lot of really talented people there. There's a lot of people who are a lot more talented than me. So I think that luck factors in, but also it's about, working really hard and not giving up just because people say it's a reach school.
Okay, excellent. Although you're being a little bit too modest, I think you deserve to get in, and you did. So good on you. All right, so freshman year, let's talk about, tell people who are interested in perhaps going to NYU what they can expect in their freshman year as a film student.
Freshman year is foundation, foundation, foundation. You don't actually shoot a film at all. You shoot a project with still photos, though. You are essentially getting a groundwork in sound design, and photography. You're learning how to set up a frame. You're learning how to be concise with the images that you snap and put next to each other. So you make these kind of little flip books. And it's really just a year of, we're not going to let you make a movie because you need to know every little piece of it, every side of it, before you embark on directing it. They also have a crew requirement. You need to work on an upperclassman's film. They only require 12 hours, which I think is ridiculous. You should work as much on a set as you can. I worked a lot on set. I spent, and I admit I learned more on set that year than I did in class. I worked in the electrical department. I ran a lot of cable. I helped with the lighting. And I learned a lot about how to set runs and how people interact with each other, the way that tensions can flare and be quelled, about timing. And you kind of learn that freshman year you can be a storyteller from a million different sides, not just as a director or writer. I learned that you can be telling stories with the lighting, with the camera. Even the PA sort of helps tell the story, even if they're running out to get that last little prop and bring it to set. It really helps. So that year was a really great foundation about, how everyone's important, not just the director.
Okay, now I think it's also important to note and tell people who may be watching this program and interested in going to NYU Film School that it's not all film school. There are regular academics as part of your course load.
Yes, you have to take, I think it's 128 credits. Only about half of them are film. The rest are being fulfilled by humanities and sciences. I myself am a politics minor. I took a lot of those classes in the politics department at NYU, which is pretty well known, and I really enjoyed those classes. And so you do have to take some core curriculum. You get a little bit of leeway. You don't have to take math ever again, but you need to be a well-rounded student and sort of pursue things outside of your major.
Now, you did something very interesting, and I think every film student should do. Between your freshman and sophomore years, you continued on a course of self-education. Tell us what you did during that summer.
Well, that summer I made a short film, sort of using what I had learned during my freshman year. I actually
And you made that right here in Simsbury?
Yeah, I came to Simsbury. I used local talent. I used the cameras that are recording us right now. So I just can't stop working. So I am only as good as my next film. So when I got out of school that semester, I was like, I need to make something. So I made that film with friends, and we premiered it in town, and it was a really good experience.
Okay. All right. So now you go into your second year. You got a little experience under your belt. You're raring to go. Tell us what an NYU film student does in their second year.
Sophomore year is the best year at NYU. For most people, I think they would say that, and it's specifically for one class called Sight and Sound Film. Now it's Sight and Sound Filmmaking, because unfortunately you don't get to use film anymore. It's all digitized. But Sight and Sound Filmmaking is an incredible class where you make 5 movies over the course of a single semester. And it's the only time in your entire life where you're going to basically be required to shoot, edit, direct, write, find locations, premiere and critique. You're just doing things all the time. You're always making a movie, but you're also always planning the next movie, and it really forces you to be really, really creative, because you're limited. You only have like a week to put this together and to edit it. So you really learn how to be a storyteller, how to be concise, and basically you learn that the most important thing is the idea. You can have all these toys, and people like get mad in that class. They're like, oh, I want a better camera, I want better sound. But I think the people who really get a lot out of it are the people who have a really great idea and they can tell it in 2 minutes. And you can make 5 of them. You can make 100 of them if you want. So that class is great.
But back in my day, when I took Sight and Sound, we formed into teams, and that was the team we worked with for the entire year, without exception, except in some unusual circumstances.
Sure.
Is that still the case?
That is still the case. You're paired up sort of randomly the first day with 3 or 4 people. I think I had 4 in my group. I did have 4 in my group. And you sort of perform the key roles on set. So I would direct, but then my friend would shoot it. The other person would AD, kind of keep us on time. And then usually the other person would be a multitude of things, either sound on the later projects or producing,
So
wrangling.
that's the key. The team concept is it's not always your film. You're working
Right.
as a crew person on someone else's film, but then it comes back around to your turn.
Absolutely.
And they're crewing for your film.
Yeah, and you learn to really respect each other and realize that you can't do it on your own, which I think is why they give you the group and they don't just give you a camera and you run out and shoot. It's about learning how to be with a crew, and everyone has input and everyone helps you make that film. And then you would only expect that the people helping you make your film, you want to help them as much as they helped you. So you sort of build this camaraderie and you all help each other out.
So you said before Sight and Sound is a year-long course. What is the essential difference between the fall semester and the spring semester in Sight and Sound?
Sight and Sound, well, you have choices actually. Everyone has to take Sight and Sound Film, which is the class I just described, but then you have a choice for the other semester. It's either documentary or television. I took Studio, which is a television class where you're in a studio a lot like this and you learn how to operate a switcher. It's a larger class, so everyone performs a variety of roles. You have a boom op, AD, floor manager, the switcher, the person at the board. There's so many different things, and that class is really great, except, I admit, not a lot of TV is shot that way anymore. But in terms of just the sheer level of work that needed to be done to put on any production, it really gives you an appreciation for, television production and studio production.
Okay. All right. So now we move to the big year. Now you've got 2 years under your belt, a lot of little films that you have directed or written and directed yourself, as well as working on a myriad of other people's films. So what was the class that you decided to do Little Drifter in? What was the name of that class?
It used to be called Color Sync. Now it's called Intermediate Narrative. I think they change the names every once in a while just to sound hip.
Okay, Intermediate Narrative. All right, but actually, before we go into that,
Yes.
I would really think we need to show people some of the clips from your freshman and sophomore years. Okay, welcome back. Tell us what we just saw. From which years, and what were the titles of the films?
So you just saw most of my Sight and Sounds. The very first film is the intermediate that we were talking about, Little Drifter. But interspersed in there was a film called Daddy Never Dies. That was my final for Sight and Sound.
That was the black and white.
That was in black and white.
Right.
There was A Little Dream of Me. That was the project I made between my freshman and sophomore years. That was the independent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there was a film in there called Crazy About My Baby, which I actually starred in, which was sort of a big challenge because I wanted to be in one of my Sight and Sounds and try acting, and shouldn't do that again. But
oh, Woody Allen does it all the time.
Well, he does it better. But I think those were all the films in there.
Okay, great. So let's get back to Little Drifter. What was the initial idea for the story? Where did this come to you?
I started writing it the second I was done with Sight and Sound. I knew I was going to do an intermediate. I wanted to do a bigger film. I wanted to do a different film. So the idea came a lot from looking at what I had made, which were mostly dark comedies, very dark, violent shorts, and usually the point of those films was, look how crazy I can be. And I wanted to pursue something more romantic and more traditional, to show that I could handle a drama that wasn't sick.
Well, you know what I think you need to do right now is give me the elevator pitch for that particular film.
Sure. Little Drifter is about a woman out for revenge in rural Virginia. It's a story about what happens when, after her boyfriend gets in a bicycle accident and dies, she discovers these love letters in his drawer from someone in Timberville, Virginia. And so she takes a train down there to find this writer. And there's a lot of plot twists, and you find out who that writer was, and you find out a little bit about the lead character played by Channing Pickett. You find out sort of how she learns to cope with the loss.
How long did it take you to write the script?
It took about 3 months, but it remained pretty fluid, I admit. I don't hold to my scripts as closely as some directors do, so I wrote over the 3 months, but it was constantly changing as I casted my actors. I have a huge respect for actors. I love working with them, and I love letting the story sort of come out of their ideas and thoughts. So even like up until the week before we shot, Channing would suggest something about the character, and we'd put it in and sort of play around with it. But 3 months was to get the main draft that I would submit to NYU when I first get to the class.
Was the script part of another class specifically about screenwriting?
It was not. I wrote it independently, but I had taken, and I continue to take, all of the writing classes I can while at NYU.
Okay, good. Let's take a look. You've got a 30-second clip here of Little Drifter. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
The first thing that impressed me about the film, and so many other things impressed me after watching it and going back and watching it a second time, but initially, was the whole visual layout of the film. It was very stylized. Tell me about what your vision for that was and how you accomplished that. What did you do to create what I think was a very, very high concept visual film?
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that you liked it. It was a long process. We knew we wanted it to look romantic. We had a lot of references from the 1950s, a lot of old Hollywood, very soft lighting, make the actress look like Marilyn Monroe, who Channing kind of looks like, honestly. And then I also had a lot of luck because I'd worked on so many sets. In my time at NYU, I made friends with a lot of really talented people. The director of photography on that had just graduated. His name's Oren Sofer, and he's gone on. He shoots features now. I mean, he's an incredible director of photography, and he really had a great plan for it. He really knew how to shoot it. And we had a lot of meetings beforehand talking about how we would put her alone in the frame a lot and make her feel like she's small in this big place. But the other thing we really did is we used nets. We would cut pieces of stockings and put them over the lens. And then when you are filming things, they look a lot softer and the light sort of glows around their cheeks. So we cheated a little bit to try to get that style.
Yeah, and no cheating shows. It just looks very polished. Crew, tell us about, I think you had a fairly sizable crew based on the production stills I remember seeing.
We had about 20 people. We were shooting up in Cold Spring, New York. We were living in and shooting in a relatively large house. And, everybody, we could have had more people. Some of the bigger sets, they have up to 30 people. We had the cast living with us. Channing was living with us. Everybody had a very specific job, and every position was handled very creatively. But it was a big crew. It was definitely the biggest I'd ever had, and it only gets bigger from here.
Yeah, and the casting. How did you find Channing? Like I said, she has a very striking presence, commanding presence on film.
Channing is wonderful. I've worked with her a lot of times. I met Channing in Sight and Sound way back when. She was the only one of 30 people who were invited to come to an audition for a role, and she was the only one who came, and she was perfect, and she was great. And she's very professional, so I've put her in a lot of things. She shows up in my Sight and Sound films once or twice too. So I sort of wrote the role for her. I knew that I wanted to work with her, on a larger film, and I reached out to her very early on and said, "I'm writing this film. Would you like to be the lead?" And she said yes. And she's actually in the new one too, in a smaller role. But she's just really professional, and you try to stick with those people and continue to work with them.
People you can rely on. Absolutely. Yeah. That's because filmmaking is a collaborative process, and you have to know you can work with these people, you're compatible with them.
Yeah.
And that must have been quite something, wrangling a 20-person crew. That is large.
It was fun
for a 10-minute film.
Scheduling is always fun. Yeah. Just finding out how to get people from point A to point B, getting them up into Cold Spring.
How long did
where
it take
are they
to shoot
sleep.
the film?
Shot the film over 3 days. We shot 1 day in New York, 2 days up in Cold Spring. It was pretty quick.
So, ballpark estimate, how many hours of footage did you get in the can when you finally wrapped up the principal photography?
It's a good question. It's probably like 4.5 hours of footage. I use a low shooting ratio, which means that I usually do more rehearsals than takes. So we'll actually be rolling on maybe 3 shots, and then I'll move on. So some people come out of that same week with like 7 hours.
If I'm doing my math correctly, it sounds like it's almost about a 25 to 30 to 1 shooting ratio. 4.5 hours to 10 minutes?
Well, we cut it down way in editing too. That film was originally 20 minutes, and
it was originally planned to be 20 minutes versus a 10-minute film.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's scenes that are not in there, so there's more footage that you don't get to see, so the ratio is lower. But
that's not unusual in films, that you realize when in the editing process that you're trying to make the tightest story possible. So what was originally envisioned as 20 is now 10.
Right.
Like I said, I thought it was. I told you in my email to you, it was a very tight story, and it flowed really nicely. There was no wasted space whatsoever, or superfluous footage or scenes or something like that.
Right, and I actually edited that one, so I had to be really brutal. They say that the editor is the last rewrite. They do the last rewrite. So even though I'd written a script that was something like 20 minutes long, you have to quote unquote kill your babies.
Yes.
So a lot of the stuff is on the cutting room floor.
Okay. So before we get on to the editing, we'll talk a little bit about that before moving on. But there's always funny things that happen on set during shooting that were just happens. You have a funny story you can maybe share with us?
Well, it was a quick and a longer story, I suppose. The funny story is that we ended up making s'mores the first night. They had a little fire pit in the backyard, and we're like, wait, this is perfect. It's winter, it's nice. We got 20 people there, so the first night ends with us eating a bunch of marshmallows, and that was great. But I guess a good anecdote would be that right before we shot it, it became very clear that we couldn't afford to make this movie. It costs way too much to make movies. So we ended up trying to find different clever ways to get it made. And one of the most fun things we did is that we ditched our truck rental, and my dad drove in from Connecticut. He had borrowed the Radio 106.9, the late Radio 106.9 van, and we're transporting all our gear in that. So everywhere we're going in like rural New York, there's this big Rock 106.9 truck carrying all our gear.
WCCC?
WCCC.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So they helped us a lot. They made it really possible.
Good. So what was the most challenging aspect of editing and putting this film together into a final product?
Probably length, definitely length. It's hard I don't think directors should be their own editor. I shouldn't have done it. I wanted the experience, and I got it. and I learned a lot from it, but what I specifically learned is don't edit your own film, because it's hard to cut out pieces that you wrote, directed, were on set for. You know, you're spending hours of your day working really hard to get these scenes. We spent half a day getting a scene that's not even in the film. So it's tough. It's very challenging to make those choices when you're so close to the shots, so close to the story. But it toughens you up, you know.
Yes, it does. As you said, kill your babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes for a better product in the long run if you do that.
Yeah.
All right, so one final note on Little Drifter. You had the screening at NYU last spring. What now? What you going to do with it now?
I would like to submit it to film festivals. At the moment, I haven't been doing that yet. I've been putting all of my effort, my time, and money into making the new film, the thesis film for NYU that I'm going to walk out of there with. And I think I might push that through film festivals more, because you kind of want to leave NYU with a calling card. You want to say, this is the kind of thing that I do. And Little Drifter was a lot more of an experiment, sort of, can I be really traditional? Can I do a straightforward drama? And it was a great experience, and I'm really proud of the film. But it's not the kind of thing I'm probably going to make ever again. So the new film, it's a dark comedy. It's
let's
talk
about your new film.
Sure. So it's Go to Hell.
Pardon me, did I offend you?
It's called Go to Hell.
Oh, it's called Go to Hell, so it's designed to have a sort of a shock factor there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so it's a whimsical title, because you said it's a dark comedy, and that's...
Yes.
Okay. Well, then, I guess... all right, I'm going to press you here. I want the log line and the elevator pitch on this particular new project for your senior year at NYU.
All right. Well, Go to Hell, the elevator pitch. It's a story about a man who winds up in hell for being too boring. Our main character, David, he doesn't really live his life to his fullest. He works in an office day in and day out, doesn't say more than 5 words to a person a day. And then in a freak accident, he dies and wakes up in hell, which we find out is modeled after this very rural, vast landscape. And it's sort of he's from New York City, so it's sort of like his anti-place. He's not comfortable there. There's nothing going on. For him, this is his hell. And so he makes a deal with the devil and says, I'm going to become the most interesting man in hell, where the cardinal sin is to be boring. And then he'll get a second shot at going to heaven. So definitely a dark comedy. It's sort of a commentary on a lot of things, life, death, religion. And yeah.
What is the anticipated length of this film?
So this one's actually going to be 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay.
Unless the editor
still technically a short film, but longer than Little Drifter.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand you're going to be shooting some of that locally.
Yeah. So we're shooting Hell in Simsbury. We're definitely not trying to represent the town in any way, but what we were looking for were these wide open fields which Simsbury has, which are quite beautiful, and a lot of open space and the kind of views you can't get in New York City, obviously. So we're going to be in and around town. We're going to be at some of the local businesses. We're going to shoot at Brookside Bagels at here. We're going to shoot
right here at SCTV.
SCTV. Yeah, so it's mostly going to be a local effort. We're bringing the whole crew down from New York. We're going to be living in a few houses around. Yeah.
It's not all going to be shot here.
A little bit of it is shot in New York. The
Okay.
first 2 days we're going to shoot around the city and also in a sound stage. Spoiler alert, that there's a scene in heaven that we're going to be shooting in a big sound stage at NYU with a lot of special effects.
Okay. So you're now in pre-production. Tell us a little bit about your pre-production efforts in preparing to go into production.
Well, there is an endless amount of things to do. I started really early, so I'm making it through. But you have to lock your locations, which there are many of. You got to get your cast, lock your crew. We've already started talking about post, who's going to edit, who's not going to be me, and sort of how the special effects are going to work, how we can shoot on set in a way that makes sure that the effects and the different things we want to put in later work. There's a lot of work goes into logistics. Where are people going to sleep? What are they going to eat? How much money is this film going to cost? And then all the rest of the efforts go to fundraising, because filmmaking is an expensive effort.
What little I know of this film is it's going to have a real visual style all of its own, similar to Little Drifter had its own very unique visual style.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So we're shooting, there are 3 locations. There's the New York location, there's Hell, and there's Heaven. And we're shooting them all very differently. So New York's going to be shot really flashy, really romanticized, kind of Woody Allen's New York. Lots of color. to make it seem like a real contrast to Hell ultimately. So we're gonna try to make it really exciting. If we come to Hell or we come to Simsbury, we're gonna shoot we're not gonna shoot the pretty parts of Simsbury. We're gonna shoot these open spaces and these very like long stretches of dead trees and things like that. And we're also gonna pull out a lot of the color. We're gonna wash it out and make it look less
drab.
Yeah, we're gonna make it look drab.
Hellish.
And then in Heaven, it's a big white void. We're gonna shoot it. There's gonna be no color really at all, except on what they're wearing or something. We're also going to play with aspect ratios. So in New York, it's going to look kind of like a romantic. It's going to be a little squeezed and like a movie. In Hell, it's going to be like this. So there's a lot more wideness. It feels even more empty and vast. And then Heaven, we're just getting rid of the letterboxes. Heaven's going to be just wide open space, so white everywhere.
Interesting, interesting. Now, you mentioned while we were discussing Little Drifter that there was one point you realized we don't have enough funds to do what we want to do, and you started getting creative. And now you're going through this process again, trying to raise funds. Tell us about how you're trying to, your fundraising attempts, I should say.
So we're doing a few things. Specifically, we're using a website called Kickstarter. It is a crowdsourcing website. That's when you sort of go out to the community and you ask for help, but with a service being provided. We're providing perks to anyone who donates. Every perk is different. The more you donate, you get more cool things. I think the highest donator gets. We're going to film a video since God and the Devil are in the movie. We're going to film a personal video of them writing a letter, basically, to the person who donates. A thank you from the Devil and God. It's a kind of a bizarre idea, but those are the kind of perks you can give. One of a kind. No one will ever have these kind of perks, and they get to say that they made a movie. They helped you make a movie.
Okay, so crowdsourcing is a great way to raise funds. Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter.com? Yes. Now, what if they want to find your particular film? I mean, there's a lot of projects on Kickstarter that are not just artistic projects. There's entrepreneurial projects, too.
All sorts of things.
Yeah.
If you go on Kickstarter and you type in Go to Hell, or you type my name, Jacob Bittens, the project will come up, and it'll have all the details. It talks about the story. It's got a lot of great little videos. We made like a little welcome video. It'll list all the perks, the different things that you can get if you donate. And we post very regularly updates, about how the film's going. And even once we're done with the fundraising campaign, as we shoot, we're going to update, from set. Here's some snapshots from the shoot. Here's some clips from what we shot today, some dailies. So we really want to make it so that we're bringing people into the film, bringing the community into the film, and they get to be a part of the experience. They can find us by going to Kickstarter.com and typing in Go to Hell, or you can go to our website at gotohellfilm.com.
Gotohellfilm.com. Now, what's important is the Kickstarter campaign comes to an end on the 19th of October. So if you're at all interested, please get on there quickly. But that's not the only fundraising effort. You've got some other cool things.
Yeah. Well, right now, actually, we're putting together an evil fundraising party. We're going to a bar and tavern in New York, and they've let us sort of put a person outside the door. We're going to collect like a cover charge of $10, and anyone who comes in an evil costume. We're going to be photographing them. We'll have live music. Everything will be sort of themed to the film, the Go to Hell, theme, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're doing that this Friday. So I have to start getting more prepared for that. We're doing our first makeup test for the devil on me. So I'm going to go to the party as a bright red horned man. So that should be fun.
That should be fun. Well, just to give Simsbury residents a heads up when they may see film crews running around doing crazy stuff, when do you anticipate shooting to go into principal photography?
We're going to be in Simsbury from the 19th of November through the 24th.
19th of November through the 24th. Okay, great. Great. Well, I really wish you the best of luck on this. I'm really looking forward to your next project, and I'm sure it's going to be great. What's next after that?
Next after that is graduating. I guess I'll be out of NYU, and I'm going to focus on trying to sell feature scripts. I'd like to be a writer, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll Go to Hell to film festivals if we can.
I think you should. So I think what you're telling me is you already got some story development in the works right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to having you back here to tell us about that.
Okay.
All right.
I'd love to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was great talking to you. Absolutely.